For today's session, we'll be going through the ideation stage, and it's one of the key things that enables teams to build on all the options that can help them improve and solve solutions for the customers. So let's give it a start now, and thank you all for joining. We've been going through the design thinking stages, and our focus has always been, let's touch on each stage of the design thinking process. In this particular session, we're looking at the ideation stage. For those who are joining for the first time, I am William Koseda, and I am an agile consultant and coach. I work with various companies who are undergoing agile transformation. Design thinking has become an important part of the entire process, and most organizations are moving towards how do we build a better understanding of our customer. And we've been going through the various design thinking stages. We've taken a look at the empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and plan. In this ideation stage is the process where we generate ideas and solutions through various sessions that would encourage us to understand the customer and solve the customer problems. We use this session to generate more ideas for the customer. And if we are generating ideas for the solution, we want to manage the entire process. So in this next sessions, I'll be talking about the tools and techniques we need for ideation, how we manage the ideation process to ensure that whoever is involved, the stakeholders, the teams involved, would always want to be part of such a session. The worst thing you can do is to bring all your stakeholders or the relevant stakeholders to such sessions and they don't get the benefits out of the session. So the stages of design thinking that we've discussed so far are, we're looking at the initial stage where we plan, we empathize, we define, and we are looking at the ideation stage. All the other stages add value to the ideation stage. We need to make sure that in the plan stage, we have a clear understanding of the reasons for the work we are doing. We've got our stakeholders analyzed, and we've got a research plan in place. The research plan would include the days that we'll be carrying out the various activities, who should be involved, and how that should help us throughout the process. In the empathize phase, we want to create personas, empathy maps, various use case diagrams. And in our video sessions on the empathize phase, we looked at all these techniques that would help the process. In the define stage, we are looking at analyzing all the information we've collated from the empathize phase, and we're collecting quantitative and qualitative data to be synthesized. The main outcome of the define phase is to make sure that we create a problem statement and a point of view statement. The problem statement comes down to who are we working, who are we trying to solve this problem for, and the point of view statement would deep dive into our analysis of the entire problem and come to a particular point where we've got a clear understanding of the problem and we've gotten better clarity of the problem. With the point of view statement, we can now go into the ideate stage. How do these stages go? How do we carry out these stages? I'll talk about the design sprints and the various stages of the design sprint. When we go through the ideation stage, the next stage is the prototype. So after the ideate stage, I'll talk about the prototypes and validate, which will be in future sessions. In a session, we had a good discussion on the design sprint. How can I include design thinking in my whole process as an agilist, as a non-agilist, as someone who's solving problems? These are the various steps that you could use. On the Monday, you have to go through the planning stage. Let me identify the problem that we are looking to solve. So that's Monday morning. We're spending time identifying your stakeholders. And On that same Monday, you could now start drawing out your empathy maps, your personas, and building more understanding of whom you are solving the problem for. Once you've spent time producing your empathy maps, producing your empathy statements, it allows you to now go to the next stage of, on a Tuesday, collect ideas from the various personas, from the empathy maps. So, and from the collection of ideas, you can now have quantitative data and qualitative data. So on Tuesday, you've collated enough quantitative and qualitative data. You don't want to go down the road where you collected so much data and you become overloaded with data that you can't analyze. We need to use some element of common sense in collecting the data and refining the data or analyzing the data so we can get some understanding of it. On Wednesday, you could, once you've collected the data, you come up with your point of view statement. You could also use some SWOT analysis. And then on the Wednesday, you start looking at the various ideas that would help you solve the problem. We could start the ideation stage on a Tuesday, or we could start it fresh with everyone ready on a Wednesday morning. Once we go through the ideation stage, we give ourselves the opportunity to spend time to collate a lot of ideas, start refining the ideas, and drawing down to a list of ideas that would enable us to come closer to the solution. As we near the solution, we need to create prototypes. And the prototypes could be low fidelity prototypes, which are just paper drawings, or we could go to high fidelity prototypes where we creating prototypes on a system, and that could be prototypes that could be used and we could get feedback from those prototypes. Once we've created prototypes with the teams, we've tested it ourselves, we can now take it back to the user we've been trying to solve the problem for, and then test and validate. We will have multiple options, and the options that come up with the best results are those that we'll take forward for review, sign off, and then we can implement either in an agile environment or a waterfall environment. This is taking a design sprint look, which can be used by any team if they've got a problem to solve, and the same principles apply for digital and non-digital problems. Is it a step-by-step approach? No. I continuously remind everyone who attends this session that it's an iterative approach. Each stage enables us to understand the problem, explore the problem, and then materialize a solution that would work for the customer. Pre the empathy phase, we want to know whom we are working for. In the empathize and define stage, we are understanding the problem, and we can always go back to the empathize, define, ideate stages, even when we are in the latter stages. So it's an iterative approach to solving problems, not a stage-gated approach. The ideation stage is considered as the third component of design thinking, and it's perhaps the most interesting stage. It requires a lot of rigorous thinking and encouraging people to think broadly and out of the box. And while brainstorming for ideas, we check whether the idea is possible, feasible, and viable. Yes, we are allowed to think outside of the box, but these three things count. Is the idea feasible? Is it viable? And is it possible? We don't want ideas that are just not possible, ideas that are just not feasible, and ideas that are not viable. So as people brainstorm the ideas, constantly remind them, are these ideas possible? Are they feasible? Are they viable? So you could always go back to your scope document and say, during our ideation stage, our scope constraints are we only have £1,000,000. We can only work within 6 months, and we only have 10 people to do perform the solution. So we need to make sure that these ideas are viable, feasible, and they are possible. No big dreams that can't be achieved. So we are on the ideate stage. We are developing potential options for the point of view statement. We're spending time with our various stakeholders to understand the problem and develop options. What we need for the ideate stage is our problem statement and our point of view statement. Our problem statement and our point of view statement are the key things we need at this stage. And we'll use the data from the define stage where we've created a problem statement and where we've put together the point of view statement. And with these two statements in place, we can now go into the ideation stage. What are the techniques for developing ideas? This most people would have come across. Brainstorming. Everyone would have attended a brainstorming session. And we'll talk about brainstorming for this particular session. In our next session, we'll look at mind maps, and then we'll mind maps and worst possible ideas. Then we'll finish off with the 6 thinking hats and challenging options. So for this particular session, our view is on brainstorming, a very important technique that helps with the entire process. So when do we brainstorm and how do we brainstorm? We brainstorm in workshops. And in those workshops, we want to make sure that the session is well facilitated. And we are at the stage where face-to-face workshops are not becoming viable. We are moving to the point where we are having more online workshops. And this requires a lot of management and making sure that everyone who attends is able to contribute to the entire process. In doing this, we need to create an environment. Let's look at some of the key things we should look at when creating the ideation environment. We should create an environment where everyone feels safe. Participants should be able to discuss the ideas without fear of criticism. We should use supportive language to encourage everyone to contribute. We should also use visualization tools to support the process and generate loads of ideas. And in addition, we should also encourage wild ideas. We should stay focused to the entire process and build on the ideas of others. And it's only one conversation at a time. If we observe this 9 points of making sure that everyone who attends the ideation environment feels safe, we would be able to generate loads of ideas. Any negative environment created does not lead to people generating ideas. So we need to encourage people to come out of their shells and build and draw out more ideas. But the 3 things you should always be looking out for when generating ideas are the ideas feasible? Are they possible? Are they viable? If the ideas are not feasible, possible, and viable, it's not worth taking into the brainstorming session. So how do we conduct the brainstorming sessions? In the brainstorming sessions, we could use round robin. The round robin opportunity is where everyone in the room is given the opportunity to speak. So we don't have domineering people or people who've got a good voice and can articulate themselves taking over the entire session. Everyone gets the opportunity. So if it's not your turn to speak, you don't speak. And we only want people whom is their turn to voice themselves out and help us generate ideas. It helps, but it could take a longer time in getting all the ideas out. We could also use brainwriting. Brainwriting is where we encouraging people to think of the ideas, but write them on a post-it. So we get the ideas, write them on a post-it, and then we post it on a wall or on a tool we are using. I'll talk about some of the tools we can use. Once we've got all the ideas, we want to refine the ideas. We want to group the ideas. So as we're creating the ideas, we can say, people who've got ideas around this area should put them in this particular column. The ideas could go into this other column, and other ideas could also go into this other columns. If you've got large groups, so in this session, we've got a large group of people attending the workshop. What can you do? You could create breakout groups and have facilitators for the breakout groups. With those facilitators, they are able to ensure that everyone contributes in the sessions. We will also be using visualization tools like process models, rich pictures, context diagram, use cases, and videos of the observations we've done in the define stage. The more videos or the more reflection of the actual environment would help us focus on developing ideas that are feasible, viable, and possible. In that angle, we need to make sure that we're supporting attendees with enough information to generate ideas that are feasible, possible, and viable. So here is a point of view statement. And this is for the general populace. Let's say a government wants to encourage people to have healthy habits, and the user being the general populace. What's their needs? They need to manage and improve their health. What's the insight drawn from the first stages of empathizing and defining? Improved health leads to longer lives. It reduces health problems, manages depression, increases family happiness, reduces expenditure on binge food, and leads to efficiency at work. And if all these things are considered, it can increase to the number of working populace. So these are good insights for government to encourage healthy living and healthy ways of working. And if we were to bring a group of people into the brainstorming session, we first have to set a time limit for everyone who attends. We could use an icebreaker for the session, and there are various online icebreakers out there that we can always use for our brainstorming session. We start with a problem statement and the point of view statement, and those would enable people to start rethinking about the problem. We need to stay on the topic and use online tools that everyone understands or can use. We will collate all the ideas and use affinity diagram. But when we're going into a brainstorming session, what's so important? We need to make sure that we have questions for the session. So we could be asking ourselves, what is the pain point for the user? What is most important for this user? What would create a new environment? So the what is questions are questions that we can start with. What if questions are questions that we could also start with. What if the user or what if the persona was here? How can we help them improve their lives? So you can start with the what if questions are also there to challenge the what is questions. And then we can shift on to the what wows that particular user. So if I'm creating a solution for someone, I need to know what wows them or what will get them interested in that particular option. But thinking that those options need to be possible, feasible, and viable. Possible, visible, and viable. So what wows? Among the ideas generated, we could look at what wows the user. Once we can identify what wows the user, we can always come back to the three tenets of ideation, thinking about, is it possible, is it feasible, is it viable? If it does not meet all these three, then we can then move to what works. How will the user benefit from the solution? What works best for the user? What do they need from this exercise? And those are the key questions we can use to draw all attendees to start ideating and bringing out the ideas. It's very important we go into the ideation exercise with everyone fully supportive and everyone understanding the process. So a simple tool that we've been using at Lean Icon Technology and with our various workshops are, we've been using the Jamboard. And on the Google Jamboard, it allows everyone to contribute. And the beauty of the Google Jamboard we've been using for some time now is it's anonymous, and you don't know who's typed the items on the Jamboard unless you tell them to put their initials down so that we could always go back to them. But if I am in an ideation session and people were putting ideas on the board, I would recommend people put their initials to the idea so that we can always spend some time asking them the what if, the what wows, and what works questions if the ideas do not fit into, is it possible, is it viable, is it something that we could possibly work on. So I would ask people to put down their initials, even though it would also help if we make it anonymous. So during the brainstorming exercise, it's only one conversation at a time. No other person must intervene when an idea is being given. We are giving everyone the opportunity to put down their ideas without stopping them or without impeding their ideas. And initially, we should also focus on quantity before going to the refinement stages. So in my later sessions, I'll be looking at how we can refine and make sure that we've gathered the right ideas. We should allow people to think out of the blue and get on and have more wild ideas. We must defer judgment and we must encourage everyone to be part of the session. We should bring various visualization tools to the process and enable people to have a visual picture of the intended solution. Is the ideation process important? Yes, it's the very important stage, and that would enable us to identify potential options for the point of view statement. If we don't spend time in the ideation stage to be able to solve that particular problem, we might jump into the solutionizing stage where we push for the solution instead of spending time to identify possible options that would give us a better solution to the problem. So let's spend time on the ideation stage. And how can I use it as a product owner? How can I use it as a product manager? How can I use it as a business analyst? How can I use it as a development team member? As a team, we could go through the design sprint stages for any particular problem. And when we come to the ideation stage, everyone should be encouraged to draw out various options. And the more options we get, the more we can select the best options from our problem and then develop the right solution for the customer. Thank you for joining. In today's session, we've just looked at the first stage of the ideation process where we brainstorming. The next session we'll be focusing on mind maps and what works, and then we'll look at 6 thinking hats. Then that will wrap up our ideation stage. Any questions?
Good afternoon, Williams.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, my name is Shola.
Hi, Shola.
Yeah, thanks so very much for this very wonderful session. I've never heard of ideation before, or even design thinking, until you presented it on the platform, and I thank you for that. My question is, I've worked in Scrum environments and I've never heard about it. So can I say, if I come on board a project, and see they're not practicing design thinking,
yes,
do you suggest I can present it as a proposal to the team?
Yes, you can present it as a proposal to the team. And usually practicing design thinking is considered as part of the exploration phase for the product owner and the product manager. And what then happens often in many organizations are, because the product owner and the product manager haven't spent time understanding the process of collating features, adding more to the features and understanding the problem, they don't tend to value design thinking. So design thinking is a good way when we start off from the discovery, and throughout the process of gathering and eliciting requirements, we can always use design thinking practices to ensure that we are solving the problem for the customer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So you can always encourage any team to use design thinking, and it enables them to start focusing on the problem that needs to be resolved. And I've been in Scrum teams where I have asked, has anyone taken a look at the business case or the reason for this particular project? It's high level somewhere. Not many people know what that particular issue is, or everyone has heard it through hearsay. But when we use design thinking techniques like the problem statement, the point of view statement, creating personas, sharing it at the sprint reviews, sharing it at the sprint planning session, it enables everyone to make sure that we are focusing on the problem that needs to be resolved.
Yeah. Can I add a little comment to that? Because this is something I've experienced quite a lot. Sometimes you go into a situation where somebody, and I'm doing air quotes here, has done their version of ideation, come up with what the problem is, and think this is the solution. So what you're giving, especially this is the solution we want you to work on. And it takes, and if you want to question it, you have to go about questioning it in the right manner.
Yes.
Make sure you don't ruffle feathers and make sure you bring it along. But yeah, it's quite. I think what you're saying is quite correct. You do need to question why they've picked that solution. If you start to think there might be better, but it's how you go about it. You can't just say, "Oh, why would you do this? This is rubbish." Why don't you do this way? Or can we go back to the start? You have to kind of finesse your way into.
That's a very good word you've said. That's a very good word you've said. It's managing the politics and ensuring that everyone feels welcomed in the entire process. You don't want to ruffle feathers when getting people on board through the whole process. Any additions?
Hello, Carmen.
Yes. Is Uwem?
Yeah. It's Uwem. You couldn't miss Uwem, man. I was just thinking, about the ideation stage. I mean, I heard the last statement you made about solution, but at this stage, we're dealing more with, we're just exploring the options.
Yes.
Just the options. We've not gone into solutionizing yet, just the options.
Yes.
And where everybody would then look at, based on the options they've got, this is most likely the way we should go.
Yeah.
So it's not solution yet, it's just the options towards the solution. Yeah.
It's just the options. It's just the options. Then out of the options, we could even do a strength and a weakness analysis of the options. And just carrying out the SWOT of the various options can enable us to eliminate the options that are not feasible, that are not viable, and that are not possible. So a SWOT analysis can also be used again to analyze the options to select the best option to resolve the problem.
Yeah, but you made a statement. You said that any idea that we give at this point in time we should consider whether it's feasible, possible, and viable. Yeah.
Yes.
But before you can know whether the option will be feasible, possible or viable, you have to have access to a lot of information, which a lot of people may not have had access to, like the budget and stuff like that. Because you might want to suggest something that either the budget may not be able to carry it or not. How do you deal with such a situation?
Yeah. So at this stage, I talked about the boss card. And when using the boss card, you have a good understanding of the background of the work you are, the problem you are dealing with. You have a good understanding of the objectives. You know the scope. It's only focused on this particular problem, and we're working on it for the finance department. What are the constraints for this particular problem we're resolving? We only have a budget of 500,000. We have 10 weeks or 12 weeks to work on this particular problem. And out of this, we have this number of resources that can work on it. So bringing in the boss card, which we created in the early stage, making sure that before you start the ideation stage, you've communicated the items in the boss card and potential deliverables that can help everyone start thinking around how possible is my idea, how feasible is my idea, and how viable based on the constraints I've just had. So you, the facilitator, you, the person taking the teams through the design thinking stage, you need to have collated all this information. And usually we will say is the work of an analyst, a researcher, or the product manager should have all this information to help us at the ideation stage. Yeah. So the boss card is a very good tool that enables us to understand, to refine our options and make sure that they are possible, feasible, and viable. If they are not, then you should reconsider your ideas. Any additional questions? We've got 4 minutes. So whilst you're online, if anyone has got any questions or additions, feel free to share them. So someone said, you said review the business case as well should help. Yes. So when we are in a project building a solution, we could always go back to the business case and some features we've identified for that particular initiative we might have not selected the right option for those features. We can use the design thinking stage. But the best thing for all team members is to have a good understanding of the business case. Sometimes because the business case is a 50-page, 100-page document, it just, I don't know, it puts people away. I can't say people should be put away from reading a business document like a business case. We have less time, but we have to develop that interest of reading the business case. And if we could have the business case summarized into a good point of view statement and a good problem statement, we can share those to get everyone on board. We don't always have the luxury of reading a 100-page business case. So the business case would help if everyone would read it, and it will help with the ideation stage as well. So on Friday, we've got the data modeling sessions being organized by Carlos. I would encourage you all to attend. And it's Friday, same time, 12 o'clock to 12:30. Carlos will be leading on the data modeling and design with SQL. Thank you all. Thank you all. And if you've got any additions, you've got 2 minutes to add it or 2 minutes to share before we call it a day.
Thank you very much, Kwame.
Thank you all. And let's have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, William.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time.